The Legacy of Dorothy Baker, From a Gnat into an Eagle. Before Dorothy Baker approached the platform for speaking, she often said this prayer revealed by Baha'u'llah. Praise be to Thee, O Lord my God, for guiding me unto the horizon of Thy revelation, and for causing me to be mentioned by Thy name. I beseech Thee, by the spreading rays of the day star of Thy providence, and by the billowing waves of the ocean of Thy mercy, to grant that my speech may bear a trace of the influence of Thine own exalted word, attracting thereby the realities of all created things. Powerful art Thou to do what Thou willest through Thy wondrous and incomparable utterance. Baha'u'llah. In the life of Dorothy Beecher Baker, we see a powerful integrity at work. Despite illness and injustice, she learned to channel the flame burning within. Dorothy flowed with, rather than fought against, faith's electrifying current. Dorothy walked with attention and strength, always ready to reflect the light and magnify it. This biography's purpose is to recall not only the chronology of Dorothy Baker's life, but also the drives, the suffering, the delights, and the peak moments of decision that helped make her who she was. May her story inspire your service and fill your heart. Dorothy Beecher Baker was born in 1898 at Newark, New Jersey, the year May Maxwell accepted the Baha'i faith. Related on her father's side to the famous author Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote the novel Uncle Tom's Cabin and fought against slavery. This best-selling book is believed to have influenced the American Civil War. In 1912, Dorothy's grandmother, known as Mother Beecher, took Dorothy to New York to see Abdu'l-Baha. Dorothy had been a very shy child, sensitive to the point of deep suffering in the presence of adults. She was so shy that years later she still remembered the tension she felt when she entered the room where Abdu'l-Baha was speaking. He smiled at her, and without speaking to her directly, motioned her to a footstool at his side. At first, Dorothy was much afraid that Abdu'l-Baha might speak to her, that she could hardly bear it. But as he seemed to pay her no further attention, she gradually relaxed. She was never able to remember what he talked about that day. But from that time on, Dorothy considered herself a Baha'i. Although she left that evening without speaking to him, she could think of nothing else for days afterwards, and finally wrote him a letter saying that she wished to serve the faith. Abdu'l-Baha immediately sent her a tablet in his own hand, translated by one of his secretaries, now in the National Archives, in which he told her that he would pray that God would grant her desire. A few nights after that meeting in New York, Abdu'l-Baha sent for Mother Beecher, who went to him immediately. When Mother Beecher entered the room, Abdu'l-Baha was speaking to some people, but interrupted what he was saying, turned to Mother Beecher and said, "I called you to say that your granddaughter is mine own daughter. You must train her for me." Dorothy graduated from Montclair Normal College and taught in the public schools of New York for 2 years. She was then offered a contract to teach in the Ethical Culture School in New York, but declined the offer. In June 1921, Dorothy married Frank Baker. Frank was a widower with 2 children, Conrad and Sally. And Dorothy and Frank had 2 more children, Louise and Bill. Sally unfortunately died of leukemia when she was very young. Dorothy notes that Frank Baker deserves much gratitude, for he stood by her side always, and in his own magnificent services and his support of Dorothy's teaching activities, there was the element of true sacrifice. Frank Baker enjoyed cars. In fact, one of the heavy, large cars Frank favored was a maroon Cadillac whose previous owner had been, according to the salesman, Al Capone. This car had a beautiful leather interior with tiny crystal bud vases in the back seat. It was a limousine. Frank always joked that he had bought the Cadillac so he could carry a whole local spiritual assembly. Just as he encouraged her, Dorothy showed great gentleness toward her husband. When the double living room and the wide entry hall of their home were filled with people during the Sunday night meetings, Frank would settle himself on the comfortable blue couch in the back of the room and occasionally would fall asleep as Dorothy spoke. But her loving, indulgent smile removed all embarrassment. When a snore or a sleepy snort made heads turn, she would laugh and suggest that if it annoyed anyone, they should wake him, but otherwise let him sleep. Dorothy studied the Baha'i teachings in such a way, that is, with both mind and heart, that one would think her very life depended on her being filled to overflowing with the revelation of Baha'u'llah. She often said something to this effect: "Nothing worth knowing is attained without labor, tremendous effort, and undivided attention." Dorothy always felt sure that she was to go forth to service, and that her duty would be to give out thoughts that breathe. She often said she wished her service would kindle the feelings and touch the hearts. She certainly attained this wish, for as a speaker in small or large groups, she was eloquent, persuasive, and convincing. Dorothy also had that quality of personality so necessary for a public speaker, inimitable charm. But the most important quality which was ever present, and which strangers as well as friends could observe, was that of sincerity. Dorothy's first public talk was given in Foundation Hall of the Temple of the Baha'i House of Worship in Chicago, probably about 1929, at a Rizwan feast. The friends rejoiced in her arising, as they called it. In fact, she was surrounded both before and after this talk, and one could hear comments about the attainment of Mother Beecher's granddaughter. It produced a profound sensation because most of the friends did not know that Dorothy had become, among all of the young people, one of the best informed on the Baha'i teachings. From that time on, the evolution of this Baha'i speaker was rapid, phenomenal. Dorothy was wanted everywhere. In 1928, Dorothy was a delegate to the National Convention. After that, she dedicated herself more to the service of the faith. She was first elected to the National Spiritual Assembly in 1937. Dorothy participated in leadership roles in several initiatives of the Baha'is before World War II. Among the 2 highest priorities were undertaking Abdu'l-Baha's call through the tablets of the Divine Plan to spread the faith throughout Central and South America and to address racism in the United States. Dorothy was named chair of the Inter-America Committee of the Baha'i National Spiritual Assembly of the United States, responsible for many aspects of an initiative to expand the faith to Central and South America. In 1939, she was appointed by the National Assembly to the Race Unity Committee, which she chaired from 1941 to 1944 during the war. Dorothy was instrumental in establishing the College Speakers Bureau for the Committee on Race Unity. Between 1941 and 1942, she visited 30 colleges. In 1942-43, she visited 50 more. Across 4 years through this Bureau's work, Dorothy spoke to more than 60,000 students in 20 states. During a second trip through Europe in 1951, Dorothy was appointed a Hand of the Cause by the beloved guardian Shulgi Effendi. And Leroy Iwas said, "When Dorothy heard that she is appointed a Hand of the Cause, she lost her voice. And when Dorothy loses her voice, the birds stop singing." Doris McKay, who later pioneered to Prince Edward Island, was then a fairly new Baha'i from Geneva, New York. Doris wrote of meeting Dorothy one evening in Buffalo. "Different people spoke, but only one did I remember. A young woman, tall and slim and pale, with great gray eyes, arose and reminded us by a story she told that we were all children of God. Dorothy was wearing a deep red velvet dress that offset her extreme light skin and delicacy. The impact of her personality was stunning." The following is the directive of Abdu'l-Baha to Dorothy. "Speak, therefore, speak out with great courage at every meeting. When thou art about to begin thine address, turn first to Baha'u'llah and ask for the confirmations of the Holy Spirit. Then open thy lips and say whatever is suggested to thy heart. This, however, with the utmost courage, dignity, and conviction. It is my hope that from day to day your gatherings will grow and flourish, and that those who are seeking after truth will hearken therein to reasoned arguments and conclusive proofs. I am with you, heart and soul, at every meeting. Be sure of this." Mother Beecher had said that Dorothy was a chosen vessel, that she would someday be a great teacher. The great teacher Martha Root came to Greenacre for 3 days later that summer, but Dorothy was already gone. They met within a few months for the first and only time in Geneva, New York. Doris McKay remembered. The two of them were sitting down to breakfast. It was such an experience to see Dorothy with her wonderful radiance and Martha with her quiet power of faith meeting one another like two constellations colliding. It was such a wonderful experience. Dorothy was so humble in the presence of the wonderful Martha Root. Humility was needed to learn what Dorothy could learn from the immortal Martha Root. Whenever she drove to assembly meetings, Dorothy always said the Tablet of Ahmad 9 times as she drove, not picking up any hitchhikers until she finished. Other episodes. As Dorothy left an interview with Dr. George Washington Carver, the renowned agricultural researcher, he called out to her, "Tell the world, Mrs. Baker, that Dr. Carver is very partial to the Baha'i faith, very partial." These are some of Dorothy's statements. Pray aloud so that your body will be surrounded by prayer. It helps concentration. There is always divine companionship in every loneliness. A soul is never alone. We should always be God conscious. There is only one thing in this life that I dread, and that is growing old. I hope when I go, I shall go with my boots on. If Baha'is purposely do not give what they have, Dorothy felt it was often as a result of false humility, which she described as a humility that prevents us from going victoriously ahead for God's sake. Take the cause seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. Dorothy Baker quoted the Baha'i writings, "I swear by the bounty of the blessed perfection that nothing will produce results except intense sincerity. I cannot bear the thought of inactivity. I want to be teaching full speed every day till the day I report to Abdu'l-Baha in person." Dorothy said, "It's my birthday now, and I give thanks to God for permission to live in such a time in God's moving drama." Joy appears first in the life that is inspired, and then it affects the lives of others. Every home where there is prayer is the garden of God. Being head and shoulders spiritually above others, Dorothy was a target for jealousy. She used to have many unpleasant things happen because of the jealousy of others. She'd come home. Frank would console her, joke with her, and say, "It's good to have something like this to suffer for. Imagine your chagrin and remorse when you arrive in the next world and you have nothing to say to Baha'u'llah when he asks, 'What have you suffered for my cause?' Now you have something to say." Dorothy Campbell Rougeau. In January of 1942, I was invited to a Baha'i lecture in Jackson, Mississippi. I had never heard of the faith and knew nothing whatever about it. Soon, a tall, beautiful blonde was introduced as the speaker for the evening, Mrs. Dorothy Baker, and she said that she would like to begin the meeting with a prayer revealed by Baha'u'llah, the founder of the faith. We were all seated, and after the prayer had begun, I found myself shaking all over, and finally had to hold on to the seat of the chair to try and control the shaking. My first thought was that I had a deep chill, but as the prayer ended, the shaking subsided. I was so shaken that I don't remember much of what she said. But before she stopped talking, she said that the Baha'is believed that this was the Word of God for today. And as always with the creative Word of God, it had the power to change our lives. She challenged us to buy a Baha'i prayer book, read it for 15 minutes a day for 2 weeks, and then we would be unable to live without it. Being a good Baptist, I had never read a prayer book in my life, But I found her challenge so extraordinary that I decided to buy a prayer book and read it and find out for myself if what she said was true. Needless to say, after 2 weeks of reading the prayers, I never stopped. And I found that it had changed my heart. My heart was cleansed of negative emotions and ready to study the Baha'i teachings. After a few months of intensive reading, study, and prayer, I accepted the faith. Once in Denver, Colorado, I presented her to a very small group called the Religious Tolerance Society. It was really not a very inspiring occasion. But as Dorothy talked, this mysterious flowing eloquence began to surge, and quickly everyone was enraptured. At the end, one gentleman, a rather cold, analytical intellectual, not in any way a spiritual or emotional type, spoke up, obviously highly moved. He said that in essence, certain people have been given great gifts, and Dorothy had been given the gift of eloquence. Hazel Little recalled, "At my first meeting with Dorothy, Eleanor Kepfer and I joined her for lunch at an Oriental tea room. I remember saying to her, 'This faith sounds good. I can accept it, but I can't give up Jesus.' Dorothy, gently smiling, spoke softly and kindly, 'My dear Hazel, you don't have to. This simply adds on to your Christian faith.'" Sarah Ellen recalled, "Dorothy looked at me very seriously and said, 'Sarah Ellen, you must always remain steadfast in the faith. No matter what happens in your life, remain steadfast. Because, as the first believer in your family, you carry a great responsibility.'" Tears streamed down my face. I just kept watching her face, spellbound. Dorothy fascinated me. It is easier now to understand it was an irresistible spiritual attraction before which I was speechless. There was nothing for me to say. Sometimes in her vocabulary, we went over one day to a National Spiritual Assembly meeting right from the convention where Dorothy had spoken about Latin America. She talked of girdles of immorality around South America. She used this expression, and the men never let her forget it, and no one would laugh harder than she would at herself. The men on the National Spiritual Assembly used to tease her a little bit because she was rather eloquent. Dorothy quoted the writings of Baha'u'llah concerning Jesus Christ by heart. According to Gale, Dorothy recited from memory the following passage from Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah. "Know thou that when the Son of Man yielded up his breath to God, the whole creation wept with a great weeping. By sacrificing himself, however, a fresh capacity was infused into all created things. Its evidences, as witnessed in all the peoples of the earth, are now manifest before thee. The deepest wisdom which the sages have uttered, the profoundest learning which any mind hath unfolded, the arts which the ablest hands have produced, the influence exerted by the most potent of rulers, are but manifestations of the quickening power released by his transcendent, his all-pervasive and resplendent spirit. We testify that when Christ came into the world, he shed the splendor of his glory upon all created things. After a few moments, Dorothy went out of the room to get something. Gail recalled in that interval, the couple looked at me with glistening eyes and ecstatic countenances and said, "We feel as though we have been at the altar of God." I too was in that same state of feeling transported to the presence of God. This was a powerful characteristic of Dorothy Baker. Dorothy Baker quoted the Baha'i writings. "I swear by the bounty of the Blessed Perfection that nothing will produce results save intense sincerity." This attitude of intense sincerity, according to her son Bill Baker, was perhaps the greatest secret of Dorothy's success. Mr. Afshar, a pioneer to Africa who was present in the first Intercontinental Teaching Conference in Kampala, commented on Dorothy Baker. He said, "She was, in my idea, not from this world. In my life I have seen few people like her, and I haven't seen any more since that time. At the time she was speaking English. I could understand a few words only, but I could follow her tone and her emotion, and without being able to help it, I was crying. She was talking and I was crying all the time. Her words really were God's word, and I couldn't imagine that a human being could do such work, could thrill the world." It was on the afternoon of Saturday, October 3rd, 1953, when the friends had gathered in the London Baha'i Center to meet Dorothy Baker, who was on her way to New Delhi. It was a smallish room with a door at the back. I was sitting in, I think, the second row waiting as the friends gathered before Dorothy should arrive. Suddenly, I had the most extraordinary sensation, as if pure joy were pouring over me, and I was floating in an ocean of love. I looked around to see what on earth could be the cause of this feeling, and there was Dorothy Baker standing in the doorway, having just arrived. I'm not given to having such experiences, and I can only say that I had not the slightest doubt that Dorothy's presence was the source of it. The following recollection of Jabiduk Khadem, wife of Hand of the Cause Zikrukala Khadem, describes part of a road trip she took with Hand of the Cause Dorothy Baker. The story leads to a description of how Dorothy Baker prepared for obligatory prayer. We pick up the story with Dorothy driving the car while speaking. "I have to do something that I forgot. I promised to pray for Elsie Austin because she wants to go to Africa and the door is closed. Will you help me?" And I said, "Sure." I did not know what she wanted. She said, "I want to say the remover of difficulties 95 times. She said the prayer very slowly, and with each word the tears poured down. Dorothy didn't even notice me. I looked at her. I had never experienced anything like this. Tears covered her face and dropped onto her clothes. I did not even count the number of prayers she said, but when she finished, she pulled the car over to the side of the road and she passed out. I opened the car door and called, 'Dorothy, Dorothy, please.' After a few minutes, Dorothy opened her eyes and was so happy. She said, "I'm sorry, honey, that I bothered you so much." I asked her, "Is this the way you always pray?" She answered, "Is there any other way?" "Do you always say your prayers like this? Do you say your prayer, your obligatory prayer, every day like this?" I asked. She said, "Did you ever read that you must wait to pray until you're feeling spiritual? Every morning I say many prayers so that I will be spiritual enough to say my obligatory prayer." At the airport in New Delhi, about 100 Baha'is greeted her, and Dorothy arrived in time to meet with Prime Minister Nehru, Prime Minister of India. Hand of the cause, Mr. Furatan recalled the meeting. When Dorothy went to meet Prime Minister Nehru in New Delhi, as all the hands were there, and he gave the very beautiful speech of welcome, she turned to me and with her eyes invited me to answer Nehru, which I did. Dorothy loved everybody. She showed me many kindnesses. At all the conferences, the hands gave public talks or talks to the Baha'is. When I was the speaker, she always encouraged me afterwards, praising my speaking. Once she said, "Come sit next to me, my brilliant speaker." My impression was of her spirituality. My first impression was of her spirituality, her face, her eyes, how she looked at the people. Another thing that I saw in Hand of the Cause Dorothy Baker, she did in almost all the meetings. She herself would say a prayer at the beginning and in the end, in such a way and with such spirituality and feeling that even Baha'is like myself would be uplifted. I felt I was ascending to heaven. Her voice and her manner were quite distinguished. Leroy Iowa said, "Dorothy always gave considerable thought and attention to her appearance. She spoke to me of the fact that even one's manner of dress should attract the listener to the faith." In Portugal, Dorothy had given a course called "What is a Good Administrator?" In it, she listed qualities a good administrator must have. Among them included detachment. Detachment from people, from love or dislike, detachment from praise or censure, detachment from your work. Frankness combined with courage and courtesy. A good administrator must have integrity in personal affairs consulted on by the Assembly and in loyalty to the Assembly decisions. A good administrator must have humility. Take the cause seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. Lenora Bernstein noted Dorothy's very deep sense of humility. She once heard Dorothy note, "It should be Frank, not I, who stands in the limelight. For were it not for Frank's support and understanding, I could not travel or teach at all." After catching a ride with her, an older, rather rough-looking hitchhiker told Dorothy as he got out of the car, "When you picked me up, I was going to do whatever it took to steal your money and your jewelry. but something stopped me. Whatever else you do driving around these hills, don't you ever pick up anybody that looks like me again. You hear? Never. He slammed the door and headed down the road. In the late 1930s, at a talk at the YMCA in Toledo, Ohio, a heckler stood up mid-sentence in Dorothy's talk. From his spot at the front of the meeting room, he yelled aggressively, "Madam, just what are the tenets of your faith?" Without a second's hesitation, Dorothy answered with the noon prayer, "I bear witness, O my God, that thou hast created me to know thee and to worship thee. I testify at this moment to my powerlessness and to thy might, to my poverty and to thy wealth. There is none other God but thee, the help in peril, the self-subsisting." Dorothy paused a moment, eyes fixed on the questioner. Then, seriously challenging, she said, "And now, young man, what are the tenets of your faith?" Not even a whimper sounded from him as he sank into his chair. Dorothy went on to finish her talk. After she gave a talk in Houston, a non-Baha'i businessman said, "I would give anything in the world to be like Mrs. Baker." When asked how she achieved her calm strength and radiant confidence, Dorothy answered invariably that only prayer could bring security. Her love for Baha'u'llah was reflected in her love for each person. Doris McKay, often a roommate of Dorothy's at Baha'i gatherings, would sometimes wake up and see her friend rise to say her morning prayers. Doris wrote in her diary, "The chime of an alarm clock, the silvery pre-dawn light in the room, and Dorothy rising from her bed to say the long obligatory prayer, sometimes childishly rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Then, the dignified and graceful movements, like the classic postures of a religious dance. She became the prayer. Every changing mood of the prayer was reflected in her being, the awed adoration, the bowed humility, the anguished moments of contrition, and the final meditative calm." In Lima, Ohio, the son of a Baha'i couple had suffered a nervous breakdown and had been hospitalized. Following several weeks of unsuccessful treatment, doctors ordered the young man's patients to take him to the state hospital in Toledo, Ohio. During the drive, Dorothy sat in the back seat with the young man, who talked incessantly, unable to stop the torrent of hysterical ideas burdening his mind. Terrified by his internal turmoil, the young man balked and cowered, finally throwing himself violently against the locked door of the car. Unable to calm him, his mother cried in anguish. Dorothy sat quietly beside the young man, looking ahead, containing herself, directing all her heart's energy to God. She turned to the young man, smiling warmly, and gently motioned for him to move away from the door. Dorothy closed her eyes and began to repeat the short healing prayer by Baha'u'llah. "Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou verily art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise. And the Bab's prayer, is there any remover of difficulties save God? Say, praised be God, He is God. All are His servants, and all abide by His bidding. Gradually, the young man relaxed and lay down, placing his head on Dorothy's lap, where he rested for the remainder of the journey. When arriving at the Toledo State Hospital, walking up the stairs, the young man stopped, saying to Dorothy, I can never thank you for what you have done for me. 30 days later, doctors released the young man, having been unable to find any signs of mental illness. Dorothy's ability to encourage the individual was, in the memory of many, without compare. Dorothy had a rather mystical communion with the picture of Abdu'l-Baha in her living room. Once Dorothy walked over to it, laid her cheek against the glass and said, I can go anywhere in the world. I can go through anything in the world as long as I have my beloved. Dorothy said, there's nothing I would love more than to give every minute of my life and all of my attention, all of my acts to the teaching work. But then I would become a very unbalanced person, and I would not be able to give a true picture of the Baha'i faith. I always have to see that I have 3 facets to my life: my Baha'i work, my family, and recreation. One day Dorothy Baker told Mary Lou Ewing that I must face the fact that I must make the choice between being a mediocre Baha'i and being a flame-like Baha'i who truly serves. It was frightening. But I remember that she would put it very squarely on a person, that the choice was essentially with that person as to what he would accomplish. Edna Andrews and Dorothy Baker. For weeks after the drowning accident which took the life of my 17-year-old son, I had been tortured by the same dream. His dead body walking, trying to come to me. I would waken devastated by grief. I dreaded the coming of each night. One beautiful September morning, Dorothy called me and asked me to have lunch with her. After lunch, she suggested we sit out in her yard by the lily pool in the garden. Without preamble, Dorothy said, Edna, you are sad. What is bothering you? Then I told her of the devastating dreams which came night after night. She looked at me very intently for a long moment, and then with infinite love in her voice, she gently touched my hand. With the most natural conversation, she prayed that these dreams would be removed and that I would know a lasting peace. To this day, there has never been another distressing dream, and peace did come to my heart, an abiding, continuing, blessed peace. Dorothy Baker said to Belinda Elliott, you must always remain steadfast in the faith. No matter what happens in your life, remain steadfast. Because, as the first believer in your family, you carry a great responsibility. Dorothy had my full attention. All I could do was stare at her beautiful face, so smooth, so illumined from within. She was wearing dark blue with a hat and a small veil that came over her eyes. Then Dorothy explained that the first believer at the time of the coming of the manifestation of God has the privilege of interceding for the direct members of their family for many generations. Dorothy Baker was a very extraordinary individual by all reports. When Jack McLean asked Esther Hayes, a Jamaican Baha'i lady, about her impression of Dorothy Baker, Esther's answer was very interesting. She said, "When I saw Dorothy Baker, I thought, this is how the mother of Jesus would have looked like." Dorothy also made a great impression on Rahia Khanum, and the guardian's wife was not easily impressed. Dorothy had charisma and the power of the Spirit because of her great faith and purity of heart. Irene began to weep when listening to Dorothy. She later said, "Never before had I been unable to control my tears, and I felt very much ashamed." As long as Dorothy spoke, Irene continued to cry. Mrs. Khadem came over after the talk and explained to Irene that this was her spiritual rebirth. In fact, the impact of Irene's declaration was felt by many who had attended the conference. In January, Dorothy met the local believers in the Baha'i Hall garden. Nearly 1 year has passed since the 10-year plan came into force, and pioneers have not gone to many of the goals. What face shall we show to the beloved guardian? Among the Baha'is listening, 19 people stepped forward. When the volunteers stepped forward, Dorothy turned to them and said, "Oh dear, I have nothing to give you. I give you my life. I give you my love. You will all be blessed." Dad and I sat at the Pullman table when Mother came in after taking some friends to the train who had come to Lima to visit Mother Beecher's grave. Mother dropped into her chair at the end of the table, and after talking a few minutes about the visit, suddenly said, with considerable heat, "I hope people don't make a shrine of my grave after I'm buried." Dad chuckled and asked, "And how can you be sure they won't?" Mother considered a moment, and then she answered, "If I could really have my choice, I would be buried at sea." Later, Mother added, "And if I could choose the sea, then it would be the Mediterranean, whose waves will lap continually on the shores of Akka." If one desire was left unfulfilled, it was a desire Dorothy had expressed to Rahia Khanum in a letter from February 1943. "My heart's love once again to the Blessed Guardian. When next you have the privilege of entering the tomb of the Blessed Beauty, dearest Rahia, will you pray that my life will be a ransom to the Guardian? I cannot do this, but I believe that he will answer your prayer. 1,000 thanks." During Dorothy's travels in the area of Indore, Ujan, and Shahapur, Dorothy was becoming much weaker. Mr. Irani was present in those cities and noticed her condition. During the whole trip, she was feeling ill and running temperature. Dorothy was eating very little food, only once a day, perhaps some tea or coffee and a little toast. She was feeling weakness, and all alone would break down even running a temperature. Dorothy had no strength to say her prayers sitting. Rather, she would say them lying down in bed. But when talking on the cause and teaching, Dorothy would become a lioness. Her great spirit was felt when she was talking about the cause. At the time of teaching, there was no fatigue or fever. But in Indora, when speaking, the physical strain became too much for her. In a public hall, suddenly, Dorothy had to sit down on a chair near the podium and ask that the microphone be brought to her so that she could finish her lecture. In 1953, exactly 10 years after writing that letter to Raya Khanum, Dorothy made her pilgrimage to that most sacred spot. Her prayers there surely reflect the same devoted hope to be allowed to offer her life as a ransom to free Shoghi Effendi from distress or harm. In February 1953, on her way to the Kampala Intercontinental Conference, Dorothy was welcomed to the Guardian's presence, where story has it that in greeting her he said, "Welcome, welcome 1,000 times welcome, my martyr pilgrim." Rihia Khanum recalled, "So you see that when she did eventually come here, it was the fulfillment of a lifelong dream of hers. And I remember going up to her bedroom before the night she was to leave and telling her how distressed I was that after waiting so many years to come on pilgrimage, she only had 7 nights due to airplane connections." Dorothy gave me an answer which I have very often quoted to the friends. Dorothy said that she felt that when people come here, they were like a dry sponge, and that when they had the experience of the pilgrimage, the shrines, the Guardian, in an instant they were filled like a sponge being plunged into water, and that very little more could be added. So I should not feel sad that she had only had 7 nights. Dorothy's beautiful eyes were shining when she said this, and I was deeply touched. On the 10th of January, almost a year after the Kampala conference, Dorothy was on board a Comet jet again. The flight left Karachi, stopped in Beirut, then Rome, where Dorothy mailed her final reports to the Guardian. The plane BOAC Flight 781 had taken off at 4:30 a.m. Lima time, Sunday, on its way to London, and crashed in the sea about 40 minutes later. Dorothy had had plans to continue her trip from Rome to Paris, New York, and from there to a pioneering post with her husband Frank Baker in St. Charles, Grenada, West Indies, to conduct a 10-year island crusade. A fisherman from the Italian island of Elba, Giovanni Di Marco, was on his boat just south of the island when he heard the whine of a plane. It was above the clouds. I could not see it. Then I heard 3 explosions very quickly, one after the other. For a moment, all was quiet. Then several miles away, I saw a silver thing flash out of the clouds. Smoke came from it. It hit the sea. There was a great cloud of water. By the time I got there, all was still again. Around the 12th of January 1954, a sodden purse was found on a seashore. The purse had belonged to a woman traveling on a flight from Rome to London. The plane had crashed into the sea 2 days earlier, killing all passengers on board. Inside the purse was a pamphlet with information about the Baha'i faith. The pamphlet was given to her by another passenger, Dorothy Baker, moments before both the giver and the recipient were killed. Thus, to the very end of her life, Dorothy Baker was sharing the healing message of Baha'u'llah. Her wish to die in her runners was fulfilled when she died, teaching the faith and on her way to meet her husband at their international pioneering post at the age of 55 years. Around the world, Baha'is dreamed of her that night and nights before and after. To one of the friends she said, "I never went down. I stepped straight into the arms of my Lord." A friend reported that Dorothy had appeared to him in a dream saying, "It's all right. I'm with my Lord." "Don't worry. I wasn't on that plane at all. I was with Baha'u'llah the whole time." The news of the disaster went round the world, and undoubtedly, millions of people heard the word Baha'i for the first time. Cablegram from the Guardian. Hearts grieved at lamentable, untimely passing of Dorothy Baker, distinguished hand of the cause, eloquent exponent its teachings, indefatigable supporter of its institutions, valiant defender its precepts. Her long record of outstanding service has enriched the annals of the concluding years of the heroic and the opening epoch of the formative age of the Baha'i dispensation, fervently praying for the progress of her soul in the Abha kingdom. What can one offer except a heart full of burning gratitude when a life has been forever changed? With tearful eyes and burning soul, we recount the life of a lioness of the cause who lived every moment of her precious life to fulfill her greatest desire, to be a ransom for our beloved guardian in Haifa. Dorothy Beecher Baker's worldly mission had ended at age 55. I hope that all can find time to meditate on the motives and ways of such a life.